Hey there, I'm Charlie, and welcome to a very special episode of Accessible Adventures. Now that we have reviewed the accessibility of all 4 zoos that make up Zoos Victoria, it's time to put them head to head and establish the best accessible adventure that Zoos Victoria has to offer. In order to determine which zoo is the most accessible destination, we need to give each of them a closer look. We're going to review 10 different accessibility related categories and give them each a score out of 5, leading to a potential maximum score of 50 points per zoo. The categories we're going to assess are parking, rental wheelchairs, pathways, gates, visibility, rest points, eateries, bathrooms, unique attractions, and bonus accessibility. That's a lot to go through, so let's jump right into our first category to review, parking. Let's start with Werribee Zoo. Werribee Zoo has multiple large car parks with 10 accessible parking bays opposite the main entrance and a pickup drop-off bay outside for those who need it. However, there are some sudden tight corners without clear signage that can make it harder to navigate on your first visit. Because of that, I'm going to give Werribee Zoo a 4 out of 5 for parking. Melbourne Zoo has bitumen and gravel car parks surrounding the majority of the zoo, as well as a pickup drop-off bay outside the main gate for those who need it. There are at least 6 accessible parking bays at each of the 2 zoo entrances. Melbourne Zoo is the only Zoos Victoria destination with paid parking, but if you have a level 1 disability parking permit displayed, you don't need to pay for parking. There is also a parking map available on their website that details all the different parking areas and public transport stops for your convenience. For those reasons, I'm giving Melbourne Zoo a 5 out of 5 for parking. Hillsville Sanctuary has a large gravel car park containing 8 accessible parking bays, along with an overflow car park for busy days at the sanctuary. The accessible parking bays are as close as possible to the main entrance and exit, but the ground in the car park is quite uneven due to the wear and tear of loose gravel. Hillsville Sanctuary gets a 4 out of 5 for parking. Werribee Fauna Park has a small bitumen car park on site with free parking for around 10 vehicles with 1 accessible parking bay. There is also a secondary gravel car park attached to the first, which is shared with the public park and playground next to the fauna park. But due to the limited spaces overall, Kyabram gets a 3 out of 5 for parking. Now that we've looked at parking for all 4 zoos, it's time to talk about rental wheelchairs. Werribee Zoo, Melbourne Zoo, and Hillsville Sanctuary each have manual wheelchairs available for free hire when booked at least 48 hours in advance online. Unfortunately though, there are not any electric wheelchairs or mobility scooters available at any of the venues. Due to this, all 3 of these zoos are getting a 4 out of 5 for wheelchair rental. As Kyabram Fauna Park unfortunately doesn't have any wheelchairs available for hire on site, it gets a 0 out of 5 for this category. That was a nice and easy category to review. So let's take a look at pathways. Werribee Zoo is made up of several different types of pathway throughout the zoo, including concrete, wood, dirt, gravel, and sand. The Australian Trail and New Elephant Expansion Trails are each primarily made of dirt and sand, with the Australian Trail also being very steep and uneven. Some of the wood bridges around the zoo are really uneven, and the gaps between the boards could be problematic for someone using a cane or crutches, as well as those using walkers or wheelchairs. Also, some of the concrete pathways have animal footprints embedded into them. This makes them quite uneven, which is an additional barrier for people with mobility or vision impairment. Due to those barriers, I'm giving Werribee Zoo a 3 out of 5 for pathways. Melbourne Zoo's main pathways are wide and level, but the animal viewing pathways vary considerably in accessibility and material, including concrete, wood, dirt, gravel, sand, and more. There are paths and bridges made of wood planks that are really uneven, with gaps between the boards that could be problematic for someone using a mobility aid. Many of the pathways are steep enough to cause electric mobility aids to lose their grip and slide or skid out of control. The wooden ramps in the gorilla rainforest are long and steep and don't have enough plateaus to rest and recover on. A lot of the pathways are overgrown and blocked by the surrounding trees and plant life. Finally, the steep concreted pathways down to the gorilla viewing area are lined with sharp rocks that jut out into the path. When going down these steep pathways, if you do lose control of your mobility aid, you can very easily end up colliding with these rocks and getting hurt. Due to all these safety concerns, I'm giving Melbourne Zoo a 1.5 out of 5 for pathways. Hillsville Sanctuary's pathways are primarily a mix of gravel or dirt, but also include wood and concrete. Overall, the gravel and dirt pathways are really uneven and worn out due to the wear and tear, giving the majority of this zoo an off-roading feel when it comes to mobility access. There are several points where the dips or raises in the path set me in a different direction than I was attempting, as well as the increase in uneven pathways causing me a lot more instability and pain while maneuvering. Due to the uneven pathways and additional challenges maneuvering, I'm giving Hillsville Sanctuary a 2.5 out of 5 for pathways. At Kyabram Fauna Park, the pathways are primarily a mix of gravel, dirt, and sand, but there are also wood planks, concrete, and carpet. Most paths are reasonably wide and predominantly level, but but the dirt and gravel paths are really uneven in some areas. The wood planks are also really uneven or have gaps that can cause issues for people using mobility aids, including a tree growing through one of the ramps. The historic precinct and wetlands tracks are especially difficult to navigate. There are also several pathways that aren't accessible to wheelchair users due to stairs and narrow doors. Overall, I'm giving Kyabram a 2 for pathways. We can't talk about pathways without considering the gates we need to open and close to access them, so let's jump right into reviewing all the gates. When it comes to gates, you need to be able to open and close to get around the zoo. Werribee Zoo only has gates surrounding the free-ranging animal areas on the Australia Trail. The gates are reasonably large, but not too heavy, stiff, or rusted. The majority of the zoo is accessible without needing to open and close any gates, and the gates that are there are pretty easy to use, so I'm giving Werribee Zoo a 4 out of 5 for gates. Melbourne Zoo has several pathways accessed by opening and closing double gates of different materials. Overall, the gates aren't overly stiff, heavy, or rusted, but some of the gates are quite large or awkward to maneuver. Some of the spaces between the gates are quite cramped, which can make it hard to maintain the one gate at a time rule when using a mobility aid. Due to the abundance of gates and the range of material, size, space, and condition, I'm giving Melbourne Zoo a 3.5 out of 5 for gates. Hillsville Sanctuary has the largest number of double gates of various materials that you need to be able to open and close throughout your visit. These are located at the entrance and exits of the walk-through or walk-in aviaries, free-ranging animal areas, and multiple individual animal viewing areas. They're also set up to be one pull and one push gate in each double gate set, which actually makes it harder to use in a wheelchair, especially as several of the solid metal gates are really heavy and some are even rusting in the hinges. You might need someone to assist you in opening or closing the gates if you have limited upper body strength or mobility. I personally needed Ian to help me with several that were too heavy and stiff for me to safely open and close myself. Also, as the pathways get worn down and compressed, it leads to the gates being at a higher level than the ground surrounding them, which effectively makes little raised speed bumps you need to overcome to get through the gates. For all these reasons, I'm giving Hillsville Sanctuary a 2 out of 5 for gates. There are a lot of gates around Kyabram Fauna Park that you need to be able to open and close. These are most commonly double gates at the entrance and exit of the walk-through and walk-in aviaries, but they're also located at all the free-ranging animal areas, the wetlands entrance and exit, and multiple individual animal viewing areas. The vast majority of the gates are light and easy to move. A few of them are a little stiffer or heavier, but they are overall in good condition. Due to the sheer volume of gates you need to be able to use in order to navigate the fauna park, I'm giving Kyabram 3.5 out of 5 for gates. Now that we've addressed getting around the zoos, it's time to review how well we can actually see when we get there. Let's take a look at visibility. Werribee Zoo has multiple viewing areas for most animal enclosures, but there are still several areas with limited visibility for people in wheelchairs. Some viewing areas are hard to physically access in a wheelchair, like this steep hill to one of the gorilla lookouts, whereas some are physically accessible but the vision is restricted for wheelchair users, like the hippo enclosure where the wood bar directly blocks me at face height. Fortunately, every area with limited visibility does have alternative viewing areas to help allow more universal access. With that said, I'm giving Werribee a 3 out of 5 for visibility. Most of the animal enclosures at Melbourne Zoo have multiple viewing points, but several have at least one of those viewing points where vision is blocked for people in a wheelchair due to the height of the barriers. I appreciate that there are always alternate viewing areas that I can see from in my chair, because it is really frustrating not to be able to see what other people get to just because I'm disabled. For those reasons, I'm giving Melbourne Zoo a 3 out of 5 for visibility. Hillsville Sanctuary is the best laid out in terms of visibility. Not only are there multiple viewing areas at each enclosure, I didn't come across any of the viewing areas where my vision was blocked at wheelchair height, which was a huge win. The Tassie Devil enclosure, for example, has an entirely glass barrier, so you can see the animals through it regardless of your eye line. I also want to draw attention to the bird watching hut on the wetlands track that has been designed to be wheelchair accessible. There is a section with no bench and the wall below the window juts out, allowing for someone in a wheelchair to get up and close and fully enjoy the viewing area like everyone else. This is one of several small inclusive designs around the sanctuary that really make me feel happy and seen and welcome. For those reasons, Hillsville gets a 5 out of 5 for visibility. At Kyabram Fauna Park, we did come across a couple of issues with visibility while in the wheelchair, primarily the echidnas and Tassie Devil enclosures. These areas have short fences with small windows in them, which is great for people who can crouch down to the ground or see over the fence. However, wheelchair users may find themselves at eye level with the wooden boards. At least I did. Overall, the visibility around the fauna park is pretty good, but for its limitations, I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. Now that we know how to get around and what we can see, it's time to review Victoria Victoria Zoo's rest points. There are a mix of covered and uncovered rest points around Werribee Zoo, including some form of seating at most animal enclosures and multiple dining or picnic areas with additional seating as well. However, some of the benches are stylized in ways that may not make them accessible to everyone. For example, these gum leaf shaped benches on the Australian Trail that have limited seat width and support. For those reasons, I'm giving Werribee Zoo a 3.5 out of 5. Melbourne Zoo has a range of covered and uncovered rest points throughout the zoo, including some form of seating at most of the animal enclosures and a lot of dining and picnic areas with additional seating as well. There are even several wheelchair accessible picnic benches located on the Forest of Wonder Trail. Melbourne Zoo is getting a 4 out of 5 for rest points. When it comes to rest points, I was particularly surprised by the overall number of benches around Hillsville Sanctuary, but they did range a lot in construction and condition. There are some forms of seating at most enclosures and a large number of picnic areas with benches and tables you could rest at as well, both covered and uncovered. I was particularly ecstatic to not only come across a wheelchair accessible picnic table in the picnic area, but to have it paired with a wheelchair accessible barbecue. For those reasons, Hillsville Sanctuary gets a 5 out of 5 for rest points. Finally, when it comes to rest points at Kyabram Fauna Park, I was pleasantly surprised by the overall consistency and condition of the benches around the park. In addition to standard benches at most enclosures, there is also a large number of covered and uncovered picnic areas with benches and tables you could rest at as well. Unfortunately though, there are no wheelchair accessible picnic tables around Kyabram yet. I'm also giving Kyabram a 3.5 out of 5 for rest points. As you may have guessed by the abundance of picnic spots, along with the wheelchair accessible barbecue we discussed, you are more than welcome to bring your own food from home to any of the zoo's Victoria destinations. If you want to eat something you haven't prepared yourself though, you're going to want to pay attention to this next category up for review: eateries. Werribee Zoo has 5 eateries in 2 locations open daily, with an additional 3 eateries all in different locations open during holidays and peak periods. The majority of the eateries are located next to the main gate, including Sushi, Ben & Jerry's, the Tribal Beats kiosk, and the Meerkat Cafe. The Meerkat Cafe is accessible by either ramp or stairs, and inside is one of the many accessible bathrooms around the zoo. The final eatery open daily is located in the new Elephant expansion. The Waterhole Cafe is an open plan eatery that includes an open air dining area and walk up ordering and collection windows. It is wheelchair accessible and step free. Overall, I'm giving Werribee Zoo a 5 out of 5 for eateries. Melbourne Zoo has 6 eateries in 3 locations open daily, with an additional 2 eateries in separate locations open during holidays and peak periods. There are also a series of vending machines around the zoo for additional snacks and water fountains to refill your drink bottles. The 3 primary eateries are the Giraffe Lookout Cafe, the Meerkat Cafe, and the Lakeside Cafe. The Giraffe Lookout and Meerkat Cafes are each standalone kiosks with outdoor dining available. The Lakeside Cafe is located in the Eat and Play district along with 3 other eateries, including multiple indoor and outdoor dining options. The eateries are all wheelchair accessible and step free. Melbourne Zoo also gets a 5 out of 5 for eateries. Hillsville Sanctuary has 3 eateries in 2 locations open daily, with an additional eatery in a 3rd location open during holidays and peak periods. All of the eateries are step free and completely flat, with a mix of indoor and outdoor dining options. The largest of the eateries is the Sanctuary Harvest Cafe, located opposite the Bunjil Nature Play area, along with the Ben & Jerry's. The Candlebark Cafe is located by the main exit, and during peak periods, the Banksia Cafe opens near the Reptile House. Unfortunately, as the daily eateries are all located rather close to the entrance of the sanctuary, leaving over half the sanctuary without eateries during non-peak periods, I'm gonna have to give Hillsville Sanctuary a 4 out of 5 for eateries. Kyabram Fauna Park only has 1 eatery, which is located in the main entry building. The building is completely flat and step-free, and contains one of the 3 accessible bathrooms around the fauna park. The cafe has indoor and outdoor dining options, with the indoor dining overlooking the Meerkat enclosure. Kyabram Fauna Park is significantly smaller than the other Victoria zoos, so even though there is only 1 cafe there, I'm also giving Kyabram a 4 out of 5 for eateries. Now that we've reviewed the various zoo eateries, the next logical thing to consider is bathrooms. Werribee Zoo has 7 different accessible bathrooms in 6 locations around the zoo. Most of the accessible bathrooms are combined parenting rooms with baby change tables. The bathroom in the Meerkat Cafe is the smallest and quite cramped, but overall, the accessible bathrooms are of a decent size and condition. There is one changing places bathroom located outside the front entrance of the zoo. This is the only bathroom at the zoo with an adult change table, shower, and hoist. However, this bathroom does require an MLAT key to access. Overall, I'm giving Werribee Zoo a 4.5 out of 5 for bathrooms. Melbourne Zoo has the highest number of accessible bathrooms of the 4 Victoria zoos, with 8 different accessible bathrooms in in 6 different locations. The bathrooms themselves aren't necessarily the best overall though. Next to the main gate, the accessible bathroom is very small and strangely shaped, making it hard to navigate in a wheelchair, which does feel rather counterproductive. This is located next to the only changing places bathroom actually located inside one of the zoo properties rather than being outside the main entrance. As is the standard, the changing places bathroom comes complete with an adult change table and hoist in addition to accessible toilet facilities. However, you need to have an MLAC key in order to access it. There is an accessible bathroom located around the corner from the Giraffe Lookout Cafe that is a combined parenting room. The bathroom is split into 2 parts when you enter, with the toilet and changing table on one side and the sink on the other. There is a decent amount of room to navigate around this, but it can make opening and closing the door a little bit more difficult depending on your mobility aid, especially as this is also a heavier door. There's an accessible bathroom near the rail gate that is not a standalone toilet. Instead, it's a large cubicle at the end of a line of cubicles with all of the sinks on the opposite wall. Typically, this is one of the bathrooms I avoid when I'm visiting because I don't want to have to use the hand controls on my wheelchair before I'm able to wash my hands. The remaining accessible bathrooms are all of reasonably good size and condition, though the door is a little heavy on some of them. Overall, despite the large number of bathrooms around the zoo, due to the varying condition, size, layout, and usability, I'm giving Melbourne Zoo a 3.5 out of 5 for bathrooms. There are 4 accessible bathrooms at Healesville Sanctuary, but only 2 are located inside the sanctuary itself. The other 2 accessible bathrooms are located between the main gate and the entry queues to the zoo. These are a standard accessible bathroom and a changing places bathroom that contains an adult changing table, hoist, and shower, but requires an MLAC key to access. Both of these bathrooms are large and easy to navigate with my wheelchair. Once you're actually inside the sanctuary itself, it's pretty disappointing. There is a small bathroom by the Sanctuary Harvest Cafe that is cramped and exposed to wildlife, bugs, and flies, which makes it much less clean or pleasant to use. It's also located pretty close to the entrance of a sanctuary, which I think is a mistake in layout, especially considering the only other accessible bathroom is so far away. The final accessible bathroom is spacious and opened via waving at a motion sensor rather than buttons or keys. This is also a combination accessible and family bathroom. The issue is that this is the sole bathroom with baby change facilities and wheelchair access to service over half of the sanctuary. This limits the availability of this vital bathroom for both groups of people and can lead to really long wait times. For all those reasons, I'm giving Healesville Sanctuary a 2.5 out of 5 for bathrooms. There are currently 3 accessible toilets at Kyabram Fauna Park, though one is due to be removed. The accessible bathrooms in the main building and the education centre are both of reasonable size and condition, containing a baby change table. However, the door to the bathroom in the education centre is really heavy. The final accessible bathroom is located in the bathroom block near the new reptile enclosure, which I've been advised is going to be removed as part of their renovations. The toilet block has a gated door and only one sink to service the row of stalls. It is damp, dark, and unpleasant. The accessible stall is located furthest from the entrance and is really cramped, making it hard to close the stall door or maneuver my wheelchair inside the stall. Unfortunately, there's not a changing places bathroom at the fauna park, so there's no bathroom with an adult change table, shower, or hoist. Overall, I'm giving Kyabram a 3 out of 5 for bathrooms. We've discussed all the elements that each Victoria Zoo has in common, but now it's time to take a look at each venue's unique attractions. Without question, if you're visiting Werribee Zoo, you need to check out the free safari tour. Lasting around 40 minutes and leaving every 20 minutes on weekends or hourly during the week, the guided tour explores multiple animal landscapes and habitats. The tour guide will give you a lot of information about the various animals you'll see and the zoo's effort to help fight the extinction of critically endangered animals. For those who need it, each bus has a QR code you can scan to experience the tour using Auslan. You don't need to book a ticket to go on the tour bus, but if you need any special assistance, you can book ahead for priority boarding. This includes wheelchair users, people with mobility or vision impairment, the elderly, and even larger groups. If you're in a wheelchair or unable to take large steps, you can enter the safari bus using an electric wheelchair lift that folds out from under the bus. If you're remaining in your wheelchair, the staff will anchor it to the floor of the bus with safety straps. The safari tour itself is really incredible, and the staff help to make it really accessible. I will never stop recommending the safari to anyone who visits Werribee Zoo. Unsurprisingly, I'm giving Werribee Zoo a 5 out of 5 for its free safari tour. Melbourne Zoo has a beautiful heritage carousel located in the Eat and Play precinct next to the playgrounds. The carousel is mainly aimed at children and is quite popular, so wait times can get pretty long. You also have to pay for tickets to ride it, as it isn't included in your zoo admission. Unsurprisingly, the carousel itself isn't wheelchair accessible either. Overall, I'm giving Melbourne Zoo a 3 out of 5 for the heritage carousel. Healesville Sanctuary has a twice daily bird show, Spirits of the Sky, that features different birds of prey. The show is included in your price of admission, so you don't need to pay extra or book in advance to see see it. There is a dedicated accessible viewing area for people in wheelchairs or who can't walk down the steps to the arena seating. Spirits of the Sky is completely open air as the birds need space for their flying. However, this does mean you're exposed to the elements while watching. There is also a portion of the show where birds fly amongst the audience, which can be quite startling. I personally never skip the bird show when going to Healesville, as it really is incredibly entertaining and educational. However, due to the extreme weather considerations and the sensory concerns, I'm gonna have to give Healesville Sanctuary a 4 out of 5 for the Spirits of the Sky bird show. Kyabram Fauna Park's unique attraction is possibly the most unique of any that Zoos Victoria has to offer. A historic precinct, complete with a blacksmithing display, vintage farming equipment, a mini museum, and a historical cottage. Unfortunately, the cottage isn't wheelchair accessible due to the narrow doorway and a large step at the threshold, along with the short walkway that doesn't have anywhere to turn around at the end of inside the cottage. The rest of the precinct is largely uneven dirt or sand flooring, which I've actually gotten bogged in before. Despite the fascinating nature of the precinct, the lack of visibility and accessibility overall mean that unfortunately Kyabram is only going to get a 2 out of 5 for its historic precinct. Now that we've explored some of the more unique attractions at the Victoria Zoos, it's time to review our final category of the video, bonus accessibility. Werribee Zoo has a lot of accessibility considerations we've already discussed, but the only example of bonus accessibility that really comes to mind is the new mobility buggy shuttle service to the elephant expansion. The mobility shuttle is a free service for anyone who may need it, and they have dedicated wheelchair accessible buggies. However, these aren't actually accessible for all wheelchair users. Firstly, you have to be able to transfer out of your wheelchair into one of the seats on the buggy with a seatbelt for the duration of your shuttle ride. You enter the buggy via a ramp in the middle of the side wall, which places you perpendicular to the seats you need to transfer into. There isn't much space to turn your wheelchair around or any dedicated transfer bars to help you move from your wheelchair to the fixed seating. Additionally, there aren't any anchor points to attach your wheelchair to the buggy floor, so beyond applying your brakes, there's nothing you can do to stop your wheelchair shifting during the ride. You don't need to book ahead to use a buggy, regardless of if you need a wheelchair accessible one or not. There is a shaded waiting area behind the meerkat enclosure where you can go if you want to take a buggy. The signs advise a maximum wait time of 20 to 30 minutes, but as there is no set schedule or booking process for the mobility shuttles, you really have no way of knowing how long you would have to wait for the buggy at each end of the trail. This can be really hard for people who need to plan or schedule their days more specifically. If they have private tours booked or need to leave or eat or take medications at certain times. Additionally, as there's no way of letting the staff know you are there waiting, it can feel like you're forgotten about in the heat, which can be quite distressing for people, especially those with anxiety or neurodivergence. Despite the good intention of this inclusion, for all its faults, we're giving Werribee Zoo a 3.5 out of 5 for bonus accessibility. Unfortunately, I haven't come across any examples of bonus accessibility around Melbourne Zoo, so it's getting a 0 out of 5 for this category. Healesville Sanctuary has installed touch points at many of the animal enclosures in an attempt to help make the sanctuary more accessible for people with vision impairment. Touch points are metal models of animals with information plaques that include braille for people with low or no vision. This not only helps them to learn about the animals, but allows you to actually feel the size, shape, and texture of them. As someone without significant vision impairment and who can't read braille, I'm not really able to comment on how informative these touch points are, but this is definitely a form of accessibility inclusion that I haven't seen at any zoo before. Along with the other small accessibility inclusions like the wheelchair accessible barbecue, picnic tables, and wetlands viewing, Healesville Sanctuary really does feel like it's making an effort to be more inclusive and accessible. For all those reasons, I'm giving Healesville a 5 out of 5 for bonus accessibility. Unfortunately, I haven't come across any examples of bonus accessibility around Kyabram Fauna Park itself, but the playground next to the fauna park does contain a wheelchair accessible swing available for use with an MLAC key. I know this isn't a part of Zoos Victoria's editions, but it is still an example of accessibility that we haven't seen anywhere else, so I am giving Kyabram a 1 out of 5 for bonus accessibility. Now that we've reviewed each of our 10 accessibility categories across the 4 Victoria Zoo's destinations, it's time to reveal the final rankings and determine which location is the most accessible adventure. In last place, with only 26 out of 50 points for accessibility, we have Kyabram Fauna Park. In third place, with 32.5 out of 50 points, we have Melbourne Zoo. Coming up in second place with a whopping 38 out of 50, we have Healesville Sanctuary, which means with a grand total of 40 points out of 50, the most accessible adventure you can go on with Zoos Victoria is to the Werribee Open Range Zoo. Well, there you have it. That was my Zoos Victoria head-to-head accessible adventure showdown. To be perfectly honest, I'm not that surprised that Werribee Zoo won, as it really does have a lot to offer. However, if you disagree with any of my rankings, please feel free to let me know in the comments and we can talk about it. If you would like any more information about accessibility on any of the 4 Zoos Victoria destinations, please feel free to check out my Accessible Adventures playlist where I have dedicated reviews for each location. I've also included a link to each zoo's accessibility webpage in the description below. If you have any questions about my experiences at any of the zoos or any suggestions or requests for future accessibility reviews, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you liked it. If you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on another accessible adventure coming soon. I hope you're having an amazing day and I can't wait to see you all again soon. Bye!